there would be another airplane on final approach about to touch down, might have to go around, or if it has touched down, then this is not safe. So these are the things to be kept in mind, and that is the reason why there is. Hello everyone. Welcome to Pilot Podcast episode number 47. Wow, that's amazing. We are almost approaching half century number of episodes. That's great, and we are really happy to share that knowledge. And when students tell us that, and when they meet us and then they say, okay, I have watched the Pilot Podcast, and we feel really happy to share our knowledge and insights on pilot training with you. Thank you very much for that. So, how have you been? How is your training going? Like you're in the airline training phase at the moment, right?
Yes.
So, you are doing your observation flights. You're done with the ground training as well as you are done with the simulators. So now, how is your experience in the supernumerary or observation flights?
So the experience is pretty good, but after a long time, the schedule got busy. So we were just used to doing a couple of things in a day, but now it's like a 12-hour duty, because when you get 4 sectors in a day, whole day. So if you start at 11 o'clock from your home, you reach back at 11 or 12. And when you fly out
Correct.
of Mumbai, you always have delay because of air traffic congestion.
Correct.
And it is kind of overwhelming at the start. So first UP when I went, okay, I was like, oh, it's a lot that I have to study, and there's a lot I have to chair fly as well, because when you go there you have very short time to do all the things. So the passengers are boarding, and then we ask the ground staff for the fuel chit, like how much fuel we want, so we have to calculate that as well. See on a route if there is any weather for which, or any delay for which we need additional fuel. And then once the boarding is complete, we cross check all the weights, we calculate the performance for takeoff.
Correct.
So there's a lot of calculation which goes on, and the time is very short.
Yes.
And that comes with practice. So in the first UP, I was like, oh, that's too much. And after that, when you go on every flight, the captain teaches you, the first officer teaches you, and you also prepare the flight when there is time. So I've done that couple of times, just preparing the cockpit, and then the captain and first officer will just cross verify it.
Correct.
And that gives you confidence. So now if you compare the first flight and right now when I'm done with my observation flights, so I feel confident, okay, now I can manage it. Okay.
Correct,
Visiting different airports. So I've been to like 2 new airports every day. Okay.
Nice.
And then you observe the ATC communication, you see the airport, and mostly 2 or 3 of them were defense airport.
So which airports did you visit?
I went to Lucknow, Kanpur, Gwalior, then Surat, Vadodara, then Ranchi. So
Right.
a lot of things, a lot of
Correct,
airports in span of week. And as I'm doing my observation flights, there are no layovers.
And in metros?
Yeah. In
Which
metros, I didn't get any metro sector, to be honest.
Okay.
All sectors were...
Hyderabad, you said.
Yes, Hyderabad I get one, yeah.
Right.
Hyderabad I got one. Hyderabad is
Right.
pretty good. It has like 2 parallel runway. It has 2 parallel long runways
Yes.
and long taxiways if you are taxiing from the bay and stuff.
Correct.
So yeah.
So Bangalore and Delhi is going to be even more interesting
Okay.
if you
Yes.
consider, yes, because Delhi is, I would say, the most complex at this point, as we are talking in the year 2024, April. So as so far, and even Bangalore, for that matter, has complex taxiways and many bays, many like 2 parallel runways. Delhi has, I would say, 4 runways.
Wow.
And then, yes, it's pretty interesting there. So, yes, as you visit those airports, you will know how it is. And it's pretty interesting. And
Yes, and when we are in the airport. So last flight I had Mumbai Kanpur, and from there I had 2 hours halt at Mumbai airport. So I was just sitting at the Adani lounge, which is in the Mumbai terminal 2.
Two.
So I, captain, and the first officer were sitting. We were having food. Then one of our subscribers came and said, "Okay, you are winged engineer. I watch your podcast with Capt.Neha and Nilay."
Okay,
So
okay.
and I was excited
Nice.
to meet me, and then we had a chat. So he wanted to become a pilot, and I was just asking. So he's currently working, and he wants to switch his career to pilot. So
Okay,
we were
okay,
just talking about what are things, or what are all the possible ways
Correct, correct.
in which he can
Right.
move ahead. So yeah, this I come across many of them when I am traveling. Even the crew on board,
Correct.
sometimes they watch our podcast, so they
Correct,
say,
correct,
"Okay, we
correct.
watch your podcast, we watch your
Right,
reels."
right, right, right.
And one of the aspiring pilot also met me in Bangalore when I was boarding. So he wanted to apply for the Cadet Pilot program from the same flight school which I have done.
Okay.
So he has just cleared the 2 rounds, I guess, or something, and he was waiting for the next round. So we had a good 10-15 minute conversation
Great.
on where he is going and what all things he should look
Awesome,
for
awesome.
ahead when he goes to USA for his
Right,
training.
right.
So yeah.
Great.
So yeah, if you see us when we are flying, and if
Yes.
you can just come and say hi. If we have time, we'll definitely have a word with you. But if we are short on time, if we have to prepare for a flight, and if we have to go for the flight, then we won't be able to make a conversation. But definitely we'll love if you come to us and say hi.
In that case, we can connect on Instagram
Yes,
or
yes.
on YouTube and one of the social media channels. And yeah, that's great, amazing. So, how do you find yourself like when you go to the dispatch, when you are now doing your supernumerary observation flights? I know you're about to finish or you're done with it.
I'm done with it.
Awesome, very nice. In 1 week, you have finished like
Yes.
30 sectors.
Yes.
That's great. And you have done your entire CPL training in your flight training phase. So, that time, what preparation you used to do and the preparation that you do now? How do you distinguish these two? And if you could put more light on that.
So yes, so when we speak about preparation for a flight for an airline, so we start with the weather. So we check the terminal weather, we check the meter of the airport where we are departing from, then we check the en route weather, and then destination weather and alternate weather.
Correct.
So whether whether we will be able to land with the minimas of the company and the DGCA as well. So we have to check that, and if it is marginal or if it's something which is around our minima, we have in our mind that we might have to divert to our alternate.
Or we carry extra fuel in
Yes.
that case. And if in case the destination weather is marginal or if it is below minima at estimated time of arrival, we might delay our flight for departure itself. Or else, if we think that, okay, the weather is on the improving side at the time of estimated time of arrival, in that case, if it's just there meeting the minima, like if in case if we require visibility of 1200 meters, and if at ETA it is showing that it is 1200 itself, then we need maybe 2 alternates. Okay, so whenever the weather is marginal, we require more number of alternates because there is a chance that more number of airplanes may be diverted. So the alternate airport would also get congested.
Congested.
And then there will be delay in arrival there. So to avoid that, there are 2 alternates which need to be filed at the time of in such cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
So weather is one part. Second thing is you carry all your documents, same as your training flight. But in this, you have little more additional documents, like company ID. You have school ID. So documents is there, and then after that you have load and trim, right? For each aircraft it's different, and like the maintenance book for each aircraft is different. So we have the online apps for that here, and for flight school we used to manually check in the maintenance logbook.
Right.
And after that, we do calculate the performance for the aircraft and see whether we will be able to take off safely or no,
Correct.
or which configuration we'll be using.
Correct. Correct.
But when we talk about the training days, there, as we are flying a Cessna, which is a relatively smaller aircraft, the runway length is so huge that you can land that Cessna twice or thrice in that. Okay,
Correct.
so
Correct.
performance calculation doesn't matter that much, but in the back of the mind, we just calculate to see if we are able to land or no. Okay,
Correct,
but
correct.
here when I went to airfields where the runway length was 2,500,
Meters.
so yeah, 2,500 meters. So when you are taking off, okay, you can see the end of the runway,
Yes.
right? And that is something which I was like, okay, now I understand why we have to calculate the performance so accurately, because
Correct.
now the size of the airplane which we are flying is huge. Okay,
Correct.
flying Cessna was completely different,
Absolutely.
and flying the Airbus A320 is completely different,
Yes,
because
yes.
here you have to
Hmm.
calculate so many things for your aircraft, and you have to also verify with the captain, because there shouldn't be any mistake. If there is a mistake in the calculation, then there are chances of any accident or incident, because the runway length available is limited.
Limited.
Yes, so we have all the SOPs to minimize the errors, and
Correct.
as you see in the civil aviation, the number of accident incident have reduced drastically because
Correct.
of the implementation of SOPs.
Correct. Absolutely. It is important that both pilots cross check the
Mhm.
performance,
Hmm.
and many things need to be cross checked. When one pilot feeds one data, then other
Hmm.
pilot needs to cross check. This is a SOP, and if in case the other pilot thinks that this is erroneous information which is fed, then he can cross check it with the captain, or captain can cross check it with first officer, and then see where the error is made in the calculation, and thereafter feed the correct one. When both pilots get the same numbers with respect to speeds of the takeoff and landing. So this is about the preparation. So when we talk about flight preparation in an airline, so as you rightly said, the weather at departure, at destination, then alternate, these need to be checked, as well as NOTAMs, that is
Yes.
notice to airman,
Mhm.
that needs to be checked for departure place. If in case one of the runway is closed, or if other alternate runway is going to be in use, then there might be some delay, so you need to carry more fuel. Thereafter, if at destination at ETA, how is the, if weather is marginal, you might have to carry more fuel, or if there is a congestion expected, then you might have to consider carrying more. So if in case there is a NOTAM that one of the runway at Delhi is closed, which was the case, I mean, Delhi runway 1028, if it is closed, then that will put a lot of pressure on the remaining runways, and the air traffic will be built. So the NOTAM needs to be checked. Apart from that, the fuel requirement for that particular flight needs to be checked, depending on what is the weight of the airplane, and then calculating the performance, and what is the optimum level where we are going to cruise at, whether the turbulence is going to be affected at that level or not. In winter, generally because of jet streams, there is turbulence, so we might have to consider a lower flight level in order to minimize the effect of moderate or severe turbulence, and that can cause more fuel consumption. So these things need to be taken care of when we plan a flight, and thereafter cross checking this information with both, then both pilots will sign on the flight release, and then the flight would be commenced. As well as captain has to check whether the fuel which is loaded in the airplane is correct or not, and then check whether it is balanced or not, then sign on the fuel chit, which is the final fuel. Once you decide and come to a conclusion with discussion by both pilots that okay, we are good with this fuel, so when the amount of fuel needs to be decided, it is with consent from both pilots. So that's how it is. And thereafter, finally, once all passengers are boarded, then when the security checks are complete, thereafter security is signed and then the airplane doors are closed. So that's how the
Yes.
preparation goes.
Once the doors are closed, then the real flying starts,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, so when we do our training as a student pilot, okay, we like the procedures varies from airport to airport, from flight school to flight school. For my training, we used to start the aircraft. There was no permission required from the ATC, and then we used to go at a spot, do our engine run up checks, and from there we need to request permission from the ATC to taxi to the runway holding
Okay,
point, and
okay.
then to
Mm-hmm.
okay. So here the additional thing which we do is like we have to request for the first we request for clearance to go.
For the flight,
Yes, clearance.
departure
Yes,
clearance for the
first we
flight.
request the departure clearance, and then we have to request for pushback and
Start.
starting of the engines as well. So pushback is something which is very different because we haven't done it prior in our
Training.
pilot training. So yes, so that is something new which we will learn. So I have learned it, and when you go for your training, you'll also learn it as well. So it's basically the aircraft. There'll be a tow tractor which will be connected to the nose wheel steering, and then it will push the aircraft back according to the clearance. Okay, and
Correct.
then everything will be done as per the procedure. Then you request for taxi clearance, and then you go for taxi. So as Airbus, like any airline, when you fly a civil aviation, the wingspan is quite wide.
Correct.
Okay, so when you are taxiing on a Cessna, okay, the wingspan is quite short when you compare it with Airbus, right?
Correct. Correct.
So when you are taxiing an Airbus A320, we have to be very focused on where we are taxiing. We have to maintain the center line strictly and the speed as well when we are taxiing out of the bay,
Correct.
because if not done properly, there'll be an incident or an accident,
Correct.
and then yeah, pilots will be grounded for until the investigation is completed. So yeah, speaking about accident and incident, so when a student pilot is about to start his flight training, what are the things he or she should consider before starting their flight training?
When we start the flight training, then as a student, it is important to know that you follow the standard operating procedures for that given maneuver or for that particular phase of flight. And that needs to be done in sequence, because these standard operating procedures or SOPs are written in blood. That means someone has lost their life or has lost his or her life, or many people maybe, in order to get to the point where the SOP is required to be formed. And that is the reason why you don't want to take a chance on yourself, and you want to just follow the sequence and the rules that are laid down without fail. And that needs to be done diligently in order to ensure the conduct of safe flight. That is very much required. And if you continue to do so for every maneuver, you will have a safe flight.
Yes, so SOPs are very important. So earlier, when students go for flight training, they think, okay, now taxi speed limit, let's say, is around 15 knots. So what will happen if I go above 15 knots? Okay, so the thing what will happen is the aircraft won't be controllable after that. Okay, the rudders or
So there are limitations for taxi speed in various phases. On apron, that is where airplanes are parked,
Mhm.
there the limit is 15 knots.
Hmm.
If you have a straight taxiway, their limit is 30 knots. If in case ATC wants you to expedite for a reason, you can go up to 50 knots. Okay, again that depends if it is runway, if the runway is wet or dry. So if in case you have some low visibility condition, okay, where you cannot see anything, there the limit is 10 knots. Again, these numbers will vary, and these are different for different type of airplane, as well as maybe different operator or airline that you fly with. But if you consider these numbers, let's say if during taxiing you are taxiing at a speed greater than 15 knots on apron, what happens on apron? There are many ground vehicles, there are many other airplanes in close vicinity, as well as because of that, if in case there is any vehicle or any personnel that comes in between, which is not supposed to happen, but if it happens, in that case it will be challenging for that airplane to stop immediately, and that can lead to colliding or collision of the airplane with the ground vehicle or with the nearby, maybe pushing back airplane or so. So these are the things which need to be kept in mind, and you need to be extra vigilant whenever you are taxiing, or I would say at any phase of the flight, but especially in the critical phase of flight, when you are taking off, landing, or if you are on ground and you're taxiing. Okay, so if in case on a taxiway, on a straight taxiway, if let's say 30 knot speed is exceeded, and if there is an intersection and runway is approaching, if there is slight distraction while taxiing and you don't look that okay, runway is approaching, and you by mistake inadvertently enter runway, that is absolutely a big no, and that's like runway incursion. There would be another airplane on final approach about to touch down, might have to go around, or if it has touched down, then this is not safe. So these are the things to be kept in mind, and that is the reason why there is a limitation of taxi speed. Okay, so it's important that you have flight safety in mind, which will be indoctrinated when you continue to follow the SOPs. Okay.
Yes, and some of the things comes with experience. Until the student pilot doesn't gain enough experience, he or she should follow the SOPs by the line. Okay, whatever the SOP says, stay within the SOPs to stay incident free.
Correct.
So one incident which happened with one of the student when I was training in the US. So it was not a major incident, but what happened? He was going on a solo flight, and he went for a cross country, and there he landed at the airport. Now he landed at the airport, so his plane skidded off the runway. Okay, and that was a runway excursion. So there was an investigation on that because of the incident. It was not a major one, but why did it happen? Is it the lack of training, or anything related to the aircraft maintenance or the runway or anything? So what the investigation report came was that the brakes, right? When we speak about the brakes, so before we start our taxi, we do a brakes check. Okay. So one of the brake was replaced by the maintenance team. So one was a brand new brake on the one wheel, and second wheel was okay. It was not worn off, but it was doing okay. Okay, so now when you go or when you press both the brakes during taxi check, the aircraft will stop. But at a higher speed, when you press both the brakes, if the brake is new, that would have a higher effect, more braking effect. So because of that, the aircraft turned towards its right. Differential braking, right?
Yeah.
So this was something which came in the investigation. Okay. So yes, so it was something which comes with experience, like how much you should brake and stuff. But as a student pilot who is just starting as a solo, so both the brakes were pressed equally, and then this happened. So every time you go for a flight, you have to keep so many things in mind.
Correct.
And it is rightly said that you don't have your whole life to make all the mistakes by yourself. So it's good to learn from others'
Correct.
mistake. Okay.
Absolutely.
So after that, yes, everyone got to know, okay, when you are going for taxi, you just check the brakes, which one is working at what intensity, what is the pressure you have to press it
Correct.
upon landing.
Right,
Because
right.
this is a very small incident which gives us so many things to learn from, that how attentive we have to be when we are flying.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Situational awareness is
Hmm.
one of the very important parameter in order to conduct and have a safe flight,
Hmm.
because this is environment is very dynamic, and many parameters and many things change on continuous basis. So it is very important that you are always vigilant and you are on your toes and keep looking at all the parameters that are
Mhm.
around you, rather than fixating yourself on one thing at a time. So it's important to
Hmm.
know about it and check. Of course, having a look at all parameters at one time is not possible, but you should know which parameter is to be looked for primarily, and then keeping a background check of all the parameters. So that's how you can ensure that the flight is conducted safely. Okay, that is one of the parameter or one of the aspect of
Hmm.
safe flight, like situational awareness. So there are many expertise, like 9 expertise, which are assessed during the training, like for example, like application of procedures, whether you are applying the procedures correctly. Then communication, how do you communicate with ATC or with other crew members, and with the cabin crew, including them. Okay. Then what is the flight path management? Are you managing the flight correctly with the help of automation or with the help of manual flight? Are you taking over in time? Then situational awareness, whether it is correct or not, or there is a pilot who is not quite situationally aware in order to control a certain situation if it goes beyond. Then there is problem solving, decision making, because whenever there is any abnormal situation that arises, then you need to come to a conclusion and then make a decision in time. Then how much is your knowledge based on that particular aspect, and so systems of the airplane, that is also there. And workload management, because there are many and plenty of things to be done
Hmm.
in the airplane, and at the same time you don't have to get overwhelmed and stop doing anything. You have to ensure what is to be given a priority, and then what can be done afterwards, and need to prioritize things and manage the workload in that environment in the most efficient manner. So these are the things over which a pilot is assessed in simulator as well as in the actual flight.
So when an aspiring pilot starts their flight training, so these are all the 9 aspects which you described very well. So these are all the things they have to look upon. So some flight schools have grading as per this 9 competencies, but some flight school don't have that. Okay, so as you know now what all things you need to look for when you go for flight training for your personal development. If your flight school doesn't have those grade sheet for those particular lessons, then you can make your own grade sheet and grade yourself. Okay, did you do good, did you do bad? And depending on that, for the next chapter or next lesson, what improvements you should be doing, what all things you should work upon, that should be there for each and every lesson. So that is a
Correct.
very good way to learn. Actually, you
Correct.
ask yourself, okay, what things could have been done better, what things I need to work upon,
Correct.
and working on those things for the next lesson.
Correct,
So in that
correct.
way you are progressing to become a good pilot.
Correct. Absolutely. So, what is your opinion on a certain flight school selection? That many pilots ask us, and you
Mhm.
also,
Yes.
that which flight school should I choose? So, if you had to give an opinion about based on certain aspects, then what is a criteria based on which you should choose a flight school?
So as I have done my training from the US, and I would definitely recommend to do flying from the US, provide the financial conditions are good, or provided the planning for finances have been done by the parents by the means of loan or any mode of funds. Okay, so when a person is selecting the flight school in the US, most of the students, they look out for the cheapest options. Okay, and sometimes I get shocked, or I get shocked, like how is flight training in the US cheaper than flight training in India? Because when we speak about the salaries of the instructors, the ground staff, the people working there, minimum is around, if you convert it in rupees, is around 2 to 3 lakh rupees a month. Okay, now as we know that the flight training cost in India have been revised, and it's around 50 lakhs now for CPL in India. So in USA, the CPL cost is around 55 to 60 lakh rupees. So there will be some flying schools which will provide you training in less than 50 lakh rupees in USA as well. But then your training would be on the Cessna 152, which will be on which is a very old aircraft, and plus there will be a lot of hidden charges. So eventually when you go to US for your flight training, you will be spending approximately 60 lakh rupees minimum, provided you go to any flight school, including your accommodation, food, and the flight training.
Okay.
So yes, that is about the finances. So if you think that your finances are in place, you have planned it properly, then you can choose US for flight training.
And plus, what do you think? Maintenance of the
Yes.
airplanes in flight school should also be considered, right?
Yes.
And
So
instructors student ratio, how much do you think is ideal? And how many airplanes to instructor do you think is ideal?
so that is a very dynamic field, like student to instructor ratio, because when you go to US for your flight training, initially you go for your private pilot license and then you complete your instrument. Okay, so for that the student to instructor ratio matters, but in US most of the flight schools are pretty good in maintaining 1:5. So that is a good ratio to look at. And then once you're done with private and instrument, you don't need an instructor until you complete your 100 hours of solo, which is a DGC requirement. So that gets me to a point which is DGC requirement. Now, most of the flight schools in the US are not aware about the DGC requirement. So make sure when you are selecting a flight school, that flight school understands what is DGC requirement, and then you proceed ahead with that.
Absolutely.
And then there's also the maintenance, as you mentioned. So some flight school will have in-house maintenance facility, okay, because the number of aircrafts which they have is like 40, 50, which is very huge fleet of aircrafts. So they have an in-house maintenance facility. Every aircraft will go under maintenance check as per the FAA for every 100 hours. Okay, and after that, another thing which I think is very important will be the location of the flight school. Is it a controlled airport or an uncontrolled airport? So I personally prefer flying at a controlled airport, because that will give you chance to practice the RT communications with the tower.
Correct.
Okay, because when you go for flying, that is the only time you can practice ATC communication. Otherwise, however much you practice it on the ground with the two people sitting in front of you, you are not flying the aircraft.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
so that will be very easy for you to communicate.
Correct,
okay,
correct.
read back and have take clearance on ground. When you're sitting one-on-one, you're practicing. That
Correct.
will be very easy.
Correct.
But when you're actually flying the aircraft, okay, that will be kind of difficult.
Correct.
Okay, so getting the practice for ATC communication, that is only possible when you are flying out of a controlled airport.
Correct.
So yeah, I personally prefer flying at a controlled airport in
Right.
US. Plus, you when you're flying IFR, so yeah, that is how you can improve your communication flying out of a controlled airport. Now,
Correct.
so there's a website named Live ATC, which gives you the live ATC communication between the aircraft and the pilot, which you can listen to if you're new to aviation or if you're
Absolutely.
planning to start your flight training. So there'll
Correct.
be a lot of terminologies which will be used which you won't be aware about. Plus the radio communication sometimes won't be clear. So how to decode that also,
Correct,
you will
correct,
get
correct.
used to it.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
initially it will be difficult to note down everything, but the more you listen to the ATC communication, it becomes easier to decode it.
Absolutely.
So that website is very helpful when a person is starting their flight training.
Absolutely. So that has the frequencies and the communication
name,
from right from the delivery frequency to ground, tower, approach, control, all the frequencies
Yes.
of that particular airport, and that's really helpful to understand the accent if in case you're going to US or you are going to any other country. So that is not available for India though. Indian communication is not recorded there, but it is available for other countries. So talking about the requirements, it is important that a flight school in abroad, when students consider to do their flight training in abroad, then those flight schools should meet with the requirement of DGCA CPL license also. That means the student, while doing the flight training, as you rightly said, that they should meet the requirement of DGCA CPL.
Yes, they should meet the DGC requirement. So can you quickly explain what are the requirements to get a DGCA CPL issued?
Yes, so it is a minimum of 200 hours of flight training requirement, out of which 100 hours or more should be PIC. And when you consider PIC for flight training, it is solo hours on these single engine airplanes. Out of those 100 hours, 50 hours or more should be on a cross country solo. And in that, 300 nautical mile cross country is required, which needs to have two landings at different airports while doing that entire leg. And when you consider a cross country, the first place of landing should be beyond 100 nautical mile radius from place of departure. Then instrument flying is also required in order to have a job in an airline. So in that case, 40 hours of instrument flying is required, out of which 20 hours or more should be on actual airplane and 20 hours or less on synthetic flight simulator. That is a requirement, and within last 6 months there is a requirement of even night flying for 5 hours, in which 10 takeoffs and landings are required by a student, as well as in preceding 6 months from the date of application of CPL, there is a requirement of 15 hours of PIC, that is the solo hours, as well as all the checks like day check, night check and instrument check should be in preceding 6 months, as well as in 250 hours of day cross country is required, where one landing is required to be done, and 120 nautical mile cross country at night is required, where you need not do a landing, you can overfly and come back, and total distance should be 120 nautical miles.
Okay. Yes. You listed all the requirements and hope you have noted down. If you haven't, you can always rewind and watch it again. Note it down. This will help you when you go for your training abroad. This is about the requirements, and as we were speaking about the situational awareness. So when we are taking off from an airport, we always have to be in the mindset, okay, at any given point of time, if an engine fail, what will be my actions? Okay, I'll come back to the airport and land. And then when you are in the cruise, okay, as a student pilot, you have to have in the back of your mind, okay, which direction I am heading. So right now, if I am sitting here, okay, this is my west side, this is my east side, this is north and then south. Okay, so in simple term, this is what situational awareness is: in which direction you're going, where is the airport, okay, and at what distance. Okay, so if you have these things in mind, you will be ahead of the aircraft in case of any emergency
Correct.
which can happen.
True,
Okay,
true.
and there are many things to learn in that as well, which you will be learning in your flight school.
Correct.
Okay, we just discuss what all things you need to prepare for before going for your flight training. So we have discussed various topics to keep in mind when you plan to start your flight training. If you have any other doubts related to flight training, or if you want to do your training from India, abroad, wherever you want to do it, if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to us
Absolutely.
in the comment section, on the Instagram, uh, anywhere is fine for us. We'll try our best to get back to you.
Absolutely.
And the reason we have discussed this topic related to flight training and flight training safety is because at the end of your training, let's say you go to US for your flight training and you complete your CPL. At the end, the flight school will issue you a no accident, no incident certificate, which you will have to give it to DGCA, which means that there was no accident, there was no incident during your training, and you have received your CPL. So as you go for your training, okay, let's say if I compare driving a car, in driving a car, if you, let's say the speed limit is 80, if the speed limit increases to 100, it is a violation, but it's not something which is very severe. You'll get a ticket for it, and then you will be asked not to repeat it, otherwise the ticket would be double the price, and then your license will be uh, revoked, right? But when you go for the pilot training, if the cruising speed, if the limit of the speed is, let's say, 180 knots or 198 knots, okay, you should not increase beyond that, because there's a reason why the maximum speed of an aircraft is mentioned, above which there could be structural damage. If there is a structural damage, then the if let's say the wing gets broken, or there's some change in the wing structure above the max speed, then the aircraft won't be able to produce the lift which it is supposed to be, and then you'll drift down, and then you might have to make emergency landing somewhere other than the airport, and then that comes under the accident incident report. And to start your career, that's not a good thing. So that's why we have kept this podcast, to make you understand that stick to the SOPs, whatever the flight school have the limits, make sure you go through the limitations, you go through the procedures, and 100% stick to that procedures.
Correct. Absolutely. It is important to know that airplane also has limitations, like human has limitations.
Yes,
So airplane limitations need to be respected at most. Under any circumstances, you should not exceed those limitations with respect to speed, or with respect to many other factors as well. So if in case it is exceeded, maybe one odd time, it may not be immediately evident that there has structural damage by, let's say, few knots, but you don't want to take a chance, because there is a possibility of damage. If in case it gets struck with more gust or any kind of higher load factor, then there will be even more damage. Okay, so we don't want to exceed limitations under any circumstances, and that is a big no, and you should keep rather some margin itself below before these limitations are exceeded.
Yes, that
So
is true.
that's important to be considered.
Yes, so we have discussed various topics related to flight safety in this podcast. And if you have any questions related to that, feel free to list them down in the comment section or reach out to us directly. Thank you for watching Pilot Podcast till here, and we'll be back with a new episode next week. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching.
Bye-bye.